I want to take a moment and talk to you about your unique circle of influence. And I want you to know and have the faith that as you enter a city to plant a church, God will give you a very unique circle of influence. And that circle of influence represents all the unique contacts, a network of all the people you know within that city. People that right now God is preparing their hearts to receive the gospel that you will bring to that unique place. And it will be up to you as a planter and as an evangelist to cultivate that circle. And within that circle, it represents all the people that you'll encounter, that you'll meet. It could be your neighbors. It could be the clerk at the grocery store. It could be the people on Facebook that are searching and are looking for a church. Your circle of influence represents all of the personal relationships and that you will need, right, in order to build a church and to evangelize on a personal level as a church planter. And I want to know and I want to challenge you that as a church planter in planting a brand new church in a brand new city, it really relies upon your ability to connect relationally with people in your city. That you've got to work hard to build a network and to build somewhat of a contact list of people. And with that contact list, you've got to follow up and you've got to follow through. This is how you cultivate that circle. And attached to this video, we have a download handout. And on that handout, there's a really big circle. And in the middle of that circle is you. It represents you as a church planter. And that circle is divided into several different parts, kind of like a pie. And within each part or sector or piece of that pie represent a various sector of your life. It could be my classmates, my neighbors. It could be the people on Facebook. It could be the clerk at the coffee shop I go to a lot. And that circle represents all of the networks, all of the people that you encounter on a regular basis in your city. And you've got to be strategic and have a plan to not only connect relationally, but to step into moments where you can share the gospel with these people. This is how you cultivate that circle. And as you view your circle of influence that kind of develops over time, think through, how can I serve these people? How can I love on these people? How can I be present in the life of needs that these people have? And because this is really how you develop a contact list, and this is how you cultivate that list in a way that leads not only to friendships and to relationships, but conversions, leads to salvation in the lives of many people. You've got to believe that as you are on this kind of track into a city and in the process of planning a church, that there are people that you have not yet met that are on a parallel track, and that God is preparing their hearts, and at some point, by divine order, those two tracks are going to connect. That there are people that are right now in a state of crisis in your city. They're going through great changes and transitions, and they're looking for something to fill the void. And their life is on a very unique track, and at some point, you may walk up to the counter and buy a cup of coffee from these people. Or your neighbors may be these people. Or these people at the grocery store, or people on Facebook, within your city. All of these various sectors, all these various places in which you may connect or meet just everyday people in the city, that you've got to believe that God is preparing their heart to receive what you're bringing in that city. And there's a biblical precedent for this. In Acts 18:10, the Apostle Paul is in ministry in a city called Corinth. It was a very great city. And he's right in the middle of a season of pressure and adversity. He's trying to establish a work. He's trying to plant a church. He's trying to create a congregation. He's trying to build up a work within the city of Corinth. And on the tail end of a great season of persecution and adversity, God came to Paul in a vision and said, Paul, there are yet many people in the city. You will not come to harm. There are people in the city. And in that moment, God spoke to Paul and affirmed the fact that there were people on all of these various tracks of life, that as God was ordering their steps, He was ordering a divine connection with Paul that in time would be built into a church. So you've got to have faith for that. You've got to believe for that in your own life. And you really have to lean into the power of building relationships with people that you've never met before. That can be kind of awkward. Myself, I'm an introvert. I'm very intellectual or analytical. I'm in my head a lot. I'm not really sometimes connected emotionally with people, that it's not my natural approach. But I found that if I'm going to plant a church and I'm going to win people, I've got to lean into relationships with people that are different than me, that people that come from a different background than me, that have a different life experience with me. I've got to build common ground. Was it not Paul that said that I'm all things to all men that I may win them? I've got to find common ground, find ways to resonate with people, find ways to serve people. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you cultivate that circle that God is giving you. And within that circle of influence, follow through and follow up. If you say, hey man, let's get a cup of coffee someday, follow through on that. Follow up on that. And I remember, I think it was a podcast, I heard a statement that is probably one of the most important pieces of advice for me in planting a church. And it was this: if you're going to plant a church early on, years 1 through 3, leave your commentaries in the closet and go buy someone a cup of coffee. You know, we want to come and preach these great sermons and have powerful theology and all kinds of things. But years 1 through 3, leave your commentaries in the closet and just go buy someone a cup of coffee. Meet them where they are at on their level. This is how you cultivate your circle of influence. And it's in all of these kinds of ways that you establish a contact list and you kind of really leverage and maximize that list. And God's going to send you people, but when you take initiative to meet people and to lean into relationships, that you need to get your hair cut in the city you're planting a church. You need to buy pizza in the city that you plant a church, and that pizza that's in that city needs to be the best pizza in the world. And you need to get your car washed in the city that you're planting a church. You need to create space within your life that I'm going to spend as much time in my city so that I can meet people. So I can build a contact list, I can connect with people, and just create opportunities through which, in time, I can win people. And really winning people and converting people and saving people, it's really built on a foundation of relationship. And relationship is built on a foundation of trust. And so as you meet people, you follow up with people, you follow through with people, you're kind, you resonate with people, you find common ground, that's going to build trust. And in time, that trust is going to open the door of opportunity for relationship. And really, it's through that relationship that people are won to the Lord. No matter how good of a preacher you are, or how many circles within ministry you've ran in, or how many cool people that you know, that preaching initially years 1 through 3 and planting a church is not as important as just building authentic, resonating relationships with everyday people. And as we look to the epistles of the Apostle Paul, there are 5 unique prayers that Paul challenged the church to pray for. I call these missionary prayers, or prayers that produce a harvest. And it's these 5 prayers that I felt like God gave me in the beginning, years 1 through 3, that we taught our team, and various seasons of the life of our church, we've taught them over and over and over again. And we see these listed on the handout associated with this video. But just for the sake of time, let me kind of talk through each of these 5 prayers. First of all, Paul told the churches to pray for doors of opportunity. He said, church, please pray that I would have a door of opportunity. And you need to pray over your circle, over your contact list, God, give me doors. Give me doors of opportunity to meet people. Give me doors of opportunity for relationship, to connect with people. You ought to pray for doors of opportunity. Paul also told the church to pray for wisdom in their speech and the ability to make the gospel clear. The text of the scriptures say something close to, give me utterance that I may say it like I need to say it, so to speak. For In other words, give me wisdom in my speech, that when I have a door of opportunity, I'm standing in line at Starbucks or any typical coffee shop, or I'm taking my trash up in the driveway and I connect with my neighbor, or whatever door that opens to you to connect with someone. Paul prayed in that moment, God, give me wisdom to say the right thing that needs to be said, to really connect with this individual. Paul also prayed and told the church to pray for on several occasions for boldness. That when a door opens, and in that moment, God, give me wisdom in my speech and give me boldness to walk through the door. I remember it was Sister Connie Bernard that told me early on about planting a church that confidence is half the battle in planting a church. And that was true for me because Mr. Introvert, Mr. kind of history nerd, planning a church, sometimes leaning into relationships, it can make you feel kind of secure. Like in a room full of people, I'm going to find some corner and I'm going to find where the snacks are, right? I'm not the dude that just leans into relationships. I'm kind of sometimes can be kind of awkward in a circle of people. I get jokes a lot later than everyone. And then sometimes I say a joke that was like 9 million miles behind us. That's not even relevant anymore. And people kind of stand there awkwardly. That's kind of moments that I create in relationships. But I've got to have the confidence to step into a circle of people or step into a city, step into a neighborhood and believe that God, when those moments, when those opportunities to connect with someone open up, give me the boldness to really lean into those. Paul also prayed, God, help us that when we deliver the word, let it spread rapidly. And in the biblical text, it says, let the word have free course. In other words, let nothing prevent it. And the text here gives the image of this great, mighty, roaring river, that it flows and nothing can stop it. Nothing prevents it. Nothing can hold it back. And Paul prayed, and he told the church to pray that the word, that the gospel would spread rapidly, that God would do a quick work. And then fifth, we also see that Paul prayed, and Paul told the church to pray for victory over opposing forces. And he said it like this, that we would have victory or triumph over unreasonable men. And this word unreasonable, it represents in the biblical context things that are unwilling to give an inch, things that are stubborn and things that won't budge. And you know what? In planting a church, you won't only meet unreasonable people that are stubborn, that won't give an inch, but sometimes you'll connect with spiritual things and spiritual forces or political forces in your city that early on it was super difficult for us to find a facility because no one wanted to lease or rent to a church. And it was kind of our city's way of pushing out churches from the downtown area because they wanted business, they wanted economy. Churches aren't really, good for the bottom line in city municipalities. And so that at one point was kind of a hurdle that we had to get through. It was a wall that we had to kind of press through. But these 5 prayers helped us at various points to really break through. God, give us a door of opportunity. And when that opportunity presents itself, give us wisdom in our speech to say the right thing. Give us boldness, O God, in our approach of the gospel. And when we deliver the word, when we preach, when we teach, Lord, let it spread rapidly. Let it be like a mighty river that has free course, that nothing prevents it, that nothing holds it back, nothing can contain it. And God, give us victory over anything stubborn, anything unreasonable, and any opposing force, whether it is man, whether it's spiritual, whether it's political, no matter what we may face in our city. And these are the kinds of prayers, I call them missionary prayers. These are prayers that Paul prayed, that Paul told the church to pray. These are prayers that produce a harvest. And so when you look at your circle of influence and all the various contacts and relationships that you have in that city of unsaved, unchurched people, pray, God, give me a door of opportunity to deliver the gospel, to connect with these people. And God, in my relationships with all of these people, give me wisdom in my speech. And God, give me boldness to really lean into these relationships. And God, when I share the word, or I share my faith, or I talk about the power, the touch of God, or the Holy Spirit, or healings or miracles, let that word, that seed, when it's planted, let it spread rapidly in their heart. And God, give us victory over any opposing force. And as a way to example all of this, I want to tell you about Raven. I want to tell you about Reggie. Raven lived in the house right next to our church. And I found out over time, in just talking with Raven on the other side of the fence, going to get the mailbox, those kinds of things, at our church, that he was a photographer. And we were friends on Facebook, and I found out that he was a photographer. He did photos at weddings, he did photos at events, event photography, those kinds of things. And so we were gearing up for our grand opening in our church. And I said, hey, Raven, we want to hire you to take the photos at our church. And, we've got this event coming up. And hey, can you come in and take these photos and do these kind of different things and these different shots? We kind of gave him a list. So we basically hired him, to really take photos at this really big grand opening event. And so he was there. And we brought him back at several follow-up events as a photographer. And you know what, in time, one very regular Sunday, Raven, on his own initiative, walked through the doors of our church sometime after the service had started, and he sat in the seats and he listened. And it was very unique. And I remember seeing him and wondering what drew him to that service on his own initiative. And at the end of service, during the altar call, tears began to fall down his face. I went to pray for him, and he broke in that moment. He was going through a crisis in his life and in his family, and he needed somewhere to go. And he walked into our church doors, and we ended up baptizing him in Jesus' name. And it all began through a connection, through relationship. God gave us a door. God gave us wisdom. He gave us boldness. And God did a very quick work, and we baptized him. And so this is one example of how God will give you a contact. He'll create a divine connection with someone else that's ready to receive what you have. And secondly, I want to tell you about Reggie. My wife, one Sunday morning, went to the local grocery store to buy donuts for church. We're all about our donuts at our church. And she's getting donuts, and on the way to the grocery store, she said, God, help me to meet someone today, right this morning at the grocery store, that I can invite to church. We'd gone through a couple different services, and our guests and our newbies, that number had kind of dropped a little bit. So we're ready to really start to bring new people into the door. And so she prayed, I'm going to the grocery store, let me meet someone. And so she walks up to the big, tower of donut boxes at the grocery store. And she's reaching down to get a donut box. And she kind of starts a conversation with a guy named Reggie in that moment. And he was buying like lunch meat or something. And he's like, where do you go to church? And so there's a conversation that started. And she made Reggie promise that he would come visit. And later in the day, when we had our service at that time, we had afternoon services, he showed up. He walked through the door, and it was a couple weeks later, we baptized Reggie in Jesus' name, and now he's a regular member and a key figure in our men's ministry. And it all came out of my wife, Lord, give me a door. Help me to meet someone today. Lord, help me to connect with someone that needs what I have today. And so those are just two stories I wanted to share with you that kind of example how God will give you a circle of influence in a city. He'll put people in your path, and in time, as you work to cultivate that circle, follow through and follow up, find ways to serve, find ways to connect, find common ground, that God will answer those prayers when you pray for doors of opportunity. God will answer those prayers when you pray for wisdom in your speech. God will answer those prayers when you pray for boldness. God will answer those prayers when you pray, God, let your word spread rapidly. And God will answer those prayers when you pray for, God, give me victory over any and every opposing force. God's with you, and there are people right now that are ready for what you have.